Good afternoon, everyone. I can't move. I have to stay because of the recording, so I won't move that much. What I want to talk to you about today is a work in progress, an empirical study on an objective measure, namely an indirect measure of value congruence, and the question here was whether it or whether or not it was useful as a selection criterion, so as a selection tool. So this is an overview of what I will be presenting. First of all, the introduction. Why did we choose to start collecting data on this issue? First of all, because from a selection perspective, it's not only useful to get a prediction of performance, but in today's context, retention is also a very important issue. Second, high value congruence. Repeatedly, we've heard it over and over. It's linked to performance outcomes, intention to stay, and retention. Exactly the outcomes that we were interested in from the selection perspective. Explanations for these findings in case of high value congruence, employers tend to reinforce employees' self-concept and afford the employees to fully fulfill their needs, resulting in a successful adaptation, functioning, and well-being. And then recently, value congruence is introduced or was introduced in a study by McCulloch and Turban as a potentially interesting selection criterion. So what about PO-FIT as a possible selection tool? First of all, traditionally, PO-FIT is more used as a post-hire measure explaining effects in performance, retention, satisfaction, and so on. But from the perspective of a new selection model, where you choose to hire employees for the organization rather than for a very narrow job, value congruence might be useful also in a pre-hire context. What's already known about it, that there is a positive impact of value congruence on organizational attraction, hiring recommendation, future job performance, employee retention, and commitment. Seems a lot that's already known, but how to exactly measure value congruence in a pre-hire context? I think that's a rather difficult question. Why? As we've heard these 2 days, there are two ways to measure or to view value congruence. First manner is to view it as a subjective aspect to measure the perceived value congruence. But in a pre-hire situation, we can question the reliability of that kind of measures. Why? Because the employees or the candidates have, of course, little knowledge about the employer, and there has been little or no interaction between the candidate and the organizational members. So the social reliability and the reliability in general can be questioned of perceived value measures. And then the second manner, the objective measures the actual value congruence. In this case, it seems more suitable or a good alternative to have a look at. Up till now, I'm not aware of research that focuses on the impact of pre-hire actual value congruence in longitudinal design. So studies have already been done, but then they use a cross-sectional data, or they don't use real candidates or new employees. So that was where we wanted to make a contribution. So the hypothesis, in general, the research question, we wanted to test the incremental validity of pre-hire objective measured PO-FIT above personality traits in predicting post-hire employee performance and retention. Why personality traits? Because the link with performance and retention is already several times made with the personality traits. So 3 hypotheses. First one, where we expect a positive relationship or effects of the PO fit on task and contextual performance, and in a second hypothesis or a second part of the hypothesis, the incremental validity above the personality traits. Second, the positive relationship with organizational commitment and the incremental validity. And then third, the negative relationship with turnover intentions. Then the study itself, we used a 2-wave survey with a 3-month time interval. Data collection is still running. Up till now, we have 49 fully cases of recruits and their supervisors from 8 organizations active in diverse sectors in Belgium. So at T1, what did we measure? We measured the personal values of the recruits as well as the organizational values reported by the supervisor. We also have the scores or the reports of the HR department, but these were not included in this analysis. Then the most difficult question, of course, how to measure or to calculate the actual value congruence score. Here we choose to work with a weighted difference score, meaning that we, on item level, we calculated the difference scores and then we multiplied them with the personal importance that was attached to each of these items. And then we calculated, based on these weighted difference scores, the average for the 4 different value domains that Lyons distinguishes in his questionnaire. And then the personality traits were measured, the big 5 traits. At T2, a measure of task performance, contextual performance, organizational commitment, intention to quit, and perceived PO fit, which was not the main focus of this study, but we included it just to see whether there was a link between the actual fit at the moment of entering the organization and 3 months later. Then the findings, first of all, the correlations. What's most striking, the box filled in red, that's the relationship between the actual value congruence scores. So we have 4 of them for each value domain. There seemed to be no relationship with the outcomes we expected. Then underneath, the link with perceived PO fit, also no link, so no relationship with the actual fit and later on the perceived PO fit. And then the green boxes is the relationship between the personality traits and the outcomes. There we see a lot of positive and negative relationships as we expected. And then also the link with perceived fit. As said, it was not the focus of our study, but it's worth mentioning because that seems to relate to the outcomes very highly. And then the hierarchical regression, so where we started in the first step with the personality traits, second step included the value congruence, and in a third step we included the perceived PO fit because from the correlations we noticed that there was a significant or a high correlation between them. What is important in this table, first of all models were significant, so we could make an interpretation of them. And then a lot of the personality traits seem to be important in the correlations. In the regression, only conscientiousness stays, which is expected from the literature. And then perceived PO fit seems to be important in explaining all outcomes except for task performance, although the beta is pretty high. So findings and conclusions. First of all, actual value congruence does not affect employee functioning, nor the performance or the retention or turnover intention. Second, no relationship between actual and perceived PO fit, which we included as a control variable, but it's not a good term for it. So we reject, in fact, all the first parts of the hypothesis, and then also the second part, because actual POV does not add incremental validity beyond personality. Striking a perceived PO-fit does add incremental variance beyond personality, and thus the conclusion in response to our main research question, actual value congruence calculated by means of weighted difference scores is not valuable in the decision process of a personnel selection. Of course, these findings are very preliminary. The data collection is limited, but the findings are unexpected. Maybe this may be a support for John's statement saying that perceived PO-fit is the only thing that matters and actual PO-fit doesn't matter at all. But I think it's a very difficult question, and the question is really on the measurement of the actual PO-fit. And I think that the measurement of the values was rather good, but the question is how to calculate some kind of congruence between those two sets of scores. So we find the findings now are consistent with the meta-analysis by Arthur, which concludes that larger effects are found for perceived compared to actual PO-fit. But this doesn't solve the problem in a selection context, because I feel it's very difficult to measure that kind of fit in a selection context, and it may be influenced by or the effects that are found may be influenced by the same source bias. Then, of course, the measurement issue, weighted difference scores may not be the best option. All alternative options are welcome. A long way to go there, polynomial regression correlations. Then the measurement of the organizational values, we made their use of the direct supervisor who reported about the organizational values. Maybe top manager or HR managers, as is in our data sample, may be better suited, or a consensus score based on several line managers' evaluation of the organization. We also have supervisor-rated performance outcomes in the data collection, but we didn't add them in the model right now. And we may, in the future, also collect actual retention figures to really have a measure of the actual behavior. Now, we started 2 years ago, so it can be a nice thing to start doing now. So this study is still in progress. Additional data are being collected, and our alternative methods will be considered. All input is very, very welcome. Thank you.